These players are ramping up at the perfect time, ladies and gentlemen. The fantasy football playoffs are right around the corner, and our first guy, Joshua Dobbs, may look like a league winner straight up from the waiver wire. Now, of course, I'm very biased. We got on the Joshua Dobbs train last week after he took down our arch nemesis in Arthur Smith. We'll be hopping on that Kyler Murray train later in the video. And we were sitting here going, oh my gosh, this guy may not be great from a real life perspective. And while Dobbs has been killing it, while he's a great story, in my mind, we tweeted this out last week, the best story in the NFL right now. We can all kind of be on the same page. Joshua Dobbs, probably not a great quarterback, right? Realistically, from an NFL perspective, Joshua Dobbs, probably not a story 2 years from now. But from a fantasy football perspective, which is what I care about, this is great. You're looking at a quarterback that's stepping into a long-term situation of Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hockenson, and you're looking at a quarterback with rushing upside. Joshua Dobbs, in his first 2 weeks now in Minnesota, has had 110 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Surrounded by this type of talent, this is a quarterback that can be viable in fantasy. I mean, you go back last year, Justin Fields was a league winner in fantasy based off his rushing upside, even if Justin Fields is not a good real-life QB. Now, with Dobbs, I don't necessarily think he's going to run the ball that much, but the passing volume may be a little bit higher given the great weapons that he has in Minnesota. And going forward, I think you kind of have to rank Joshua Dobbs as a top 10 option at the position. Now, of course, we will see if he continues to run the ball this much, but even if the rushing touchdown's not there every single week, if you add in Justin Jefferson and just add in, say, 10 to 20% of passing volume in this offense, especially as he gets more comfortable, I think that does pencil him in to be a top 10 quarterback that you were able to get off the waiver wire. Now, sticking with this same team, I was initially panicking with TJ Hockenson once Kirk Cousins went down. Cousins went down, I was going, oh my gosh, okay. TJ Hockenson, one of my most drafted tight ends this year, looks like he is going to fall from our tight end 2 down to more so like the tight end 6. Well, no, TJ Hockenson's been better with Joshua Dobbs. Over the past 2 weeks, you're looking at a tight end with 27 targets. You're looking at a tight end with almost 200 receiving yards as well. This week against the Saints, if you were in our Sunday morning live stream, people were panicking. People were asking us, Hockenson, McBride, Hockenson, McBride, Hockenson, McBride. I thought it was easily Hockenson. Obviously, McBride had a great day himself. We'll probably talk about him later in the video. But nonetheless, people were extremely worried because he was supposed to be a limited player in this game. And clearly, that was not the case. Clearly, TJ Hockenson does project out to be a top 3 tight end rest of season, even with Dobbs. Now, I will say he's probably not going to continue to see double-digit targets every single week. We need to be realistic in that when Justin Jefferson does come back here, the target volume is probably going to come back down. Because if you're looking at the last 4 weeks with no Justin Jefferson, 12 targets, 9 targets, 12 targets, 15 targets. So he's out there averaging 12 targets per game with no Jefferson. Whereas at the beginning of the year, he was at 9, 8, 11, 3, 8, 8. I think that we see the 12-ish targets per game come a lot closer down to about 8-ish targets per game, which is still phenomenal for a tight end. But clearly, he's just as good with Dobbs and don't nearly need to be as concerned about having no Kirk Cousins as we initially thought. Now, going over to another player we drafted a ton of, I'll be very honest with you and kind of embarrassed to admit, Jonathan Taylor is my most drafted running back on Underdog this year. I mean, I drafted Jonathan Taylor in probably about 60 leagues total. And this is an RB that I am finally seeing what we drafted him for, and that he consistently goes out there and sees more and more and more of this backfield. Zach Moss is a complete afterthought at this point. Jonathan Taylor this week sees 23 carries, 69 rushing yards, and the rushing touchdown. Now, what I'm looking forward to with Jonathan Taylor is I'm hoping that this is a running back that begins to get a little bit more involved as a receiver. If we look at that middle stretch of games, you're looking at some games where you have 6 targets, 4 targets, 2 targets, 5 targets. If we can see Jonathan Taylor get back up to, say, 4 targets per game while he's averaging about 20-ish carries per game as that true bell cow back in this offense, I think that Jonathan Taylor has to be viewed as a top 3 running back in fantasy going forward. Now, if you're going to pull up what we have with the community rankings on flogfantasy.com, I want to reiterate, these rankings are free, and I don't make the community rankings. Y'all make them every time you visit the page. Obviously, we get that data point in how y'all are valuing these guys. If you're looking at Jonathan Taylor currently, Jonathan Taylor is at 17 overall in these community rankings. And at running back, he is RB4, only behind CMC, Austin Eckler, and Travis Etienne. I think you can make an argument that Jonathan Taylor may go a little bit higher than this, may jump Travis Etienne at this point, our third most drafted running back on Underdog. But now someone I did not draft much of, we have to sit here and say we were wrong with these rookie receivers. First, I thought Puka was not too interesting. Then I thought Tank Dell wasn't interesting. I was looking at Tank Dell and saying, well, the historical data, we have simply never seen a wide receiver this small be a league winner. It's literally never happened. I mean, I'm not even talking about rookies. I'm just talking about ever. Me, player in year 7, a wide receiver that is the size of Tank Dell, at least the size he was at the combine. And that's how we compare all these guys. 165 pounds, standing 5'8". Just never viable in fantasy. I mean, he can be a good real life player, not a great fantasy option. But yeah, no, Tank Dell saying, Mason, shut the hell up. I mean, I am a monster out here on the fantasy football landscape because I'm having 14 targets in this game against Cincinnati right after 11 targets against Tampa, 3 touchdowns over the past 2 weeks. And what's also very interesting with Tank Dell is you're seeing now that we have no Dameon Pierce in this offense, Tank Dell's kind of getting a little bit involved as a rusher. I don't want to say he's Deebo Samuel. Obviously, he's not Deebo, but he has given you 10 carries for 39 rushing yards so far this season. And I want to say that Tank Dell probably needs to be viewed as the number 1 wide receiver in Houston going forward. Because if you're looking at the target volume, he's seeing more targets than Nico Collins, even when Nico Collins is healthy. If you're looking at how far he has risen in the community rankings, you have Tank Dell up to wide receiver 23 in these community rankings, directly behind Adam Thielen, Christian Kirk, directly out of Amari, DK Metcalf. In reality, they're back to back to back to back. These guys are just going to shuffle around for a while now. But yeah, Nico Collins, on the other hand, is a wide receiver that's fallen down behind Tank Dell, now to wide receiver 27. I think Dell is the wide receiver 1 in this offense, and CJ Stroud looks like he is just going to continue to go on a tear himself. 15 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 17 total TDs to 2 interceptions. I know this is what all the talking heads are talking about, so I'm sure you're tired of hearing how good CJ Stroud is. The one thing that I just want to ask is, like, when have we ever seen a rookie quarterback be this good? Like, this is a legitimate contender for MVP this year, which is like the craziest thing to admit. But my God, I mean, he's out there, 318 passing attempts, 2,600 passing yards. You have the passing volume. He's running the ball somewhat, not a lot of rushing upside. I mean, if he could pick up, say, the 10-ish rushing yards per game up to 20-ish and start scoring rushing touchdowns at just a slightly higher clip, he could be even better than he has been. I mean, right now, if you're looking at the community rankings, you have CJ Stroud at QB 7, back-to-back with Joe Burrow in the community rankings now. Honestly, I still rather have Burrow, but I think it is up to you. Burrow going to be going up against the Ravens this Thursday night with no T Higgins. Will be interesting to watch. And also, you can go get the more than less than half a total yard for Joe Burrow on Underdog Fantasy this week with promo code FLOCK. Code FLOCK also going to get you a 100% deposit match plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. So make sure you take advantage of that with the comments. So make sure you take advantage of that with the link in the description and the comment section. Now, going over to Keenan, I'm going to be very brief. Can't really rise too much more than he already has been. Keenan Allen, yeah, 175 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Come on, he's already at the very top. I think that Keenan Allen, yes, is a borderline top 5 wide receiver rest of season. With no Mike Williams, with no Joshua Palmer, we don't really need to talk about it. Now, going over to Arizona, I want to focus in on Kyler Murray here. Because Kyler Murray was that player that we've had on buy low videos looking for that late season upside, specifically as a rushing QB. We know rushing. It's what's going to matter in fantasy, especially if you play in a 4-point passing touchdown league. And I was hesitant to play Kyler Murray his first week back against Atlanta. Thought he'd be a little bit rusty. Didn't know how much he would run the ball his first week back in. But no, Kyler Murray is right back to running around like a chicken with its head cut off. I mean, Kyler Murray was scrambling everywhere. The 6 carries for 33 rushing yards really doesn't illustrate exactly how much Kyler Murray was running. Looks like his knee is 100%. It makes sense that it would be 100% too, right? I understand that it's not like he took 18 months off or whatever, but still, he had no reason to come back. This is a tanking team. It's a team that has a borderline top 3-ish pick in their own right. And then obviously the Texans first as well. So if he's coming back, it's probably because he's 100%, seeing him run. I think you should be excited. Like if we go over and look at the QB rankings, you have Kyler Murray at QB 10 in the community rankings, only behind Justin Herbert, Tua, Stroud, Burrow, and the rest of the top 5. Now going over to Trey McBride in this same offense, McBride 131 receiving yards in the blow-up spot. Now, should this be that much of a surprise? Yeah, it's a surprise, but still with McBride, the story makes sense, right? Like this isn't some just random tight end out of nowhere. No, he was arguably the best tight end in last year's draft class. And this is a player that typically you would expect to break out in year 2. You're not expecting a rookie tight end breakout. Now, I understand you have Sam Laporta. I understand you have Dalton Kincaid. Trust me, I was not expecting Laporta. But nonetheless, if you are looking at McBride, with no Zach Ertz, he's going to continue to dominate. 131 receiving yards, the 9 targets. If you just go 2 weeks back, this is a tight end that had 14 targets, right? So I think this is going to continue to happen. And if you look at the community rankings now on flockfantasy.com, Trey McBride is up to tight end 7, only behind George Kittle, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, TJ Hockenson, Mark Andrews, and Travis Kelce. Now let's go over to Brian Robinson. Be very brief with Brian Robinson because I understand, yeah, this is a running back that has 119 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown. This is a player that I am rooting for, ladies and gentlemen. I drafted Brian Robinson in so many underdog drafts this year, but in reality, can we expect this type of production? Hell no, we can't expect this. Antonio Gibson's still here. Antonio Gibson's still getting involved as a receiver. I believe Gibson was the second leading receiver in Washington this week. Brian Robinson had 8 total carries in this game. I mean, maybe this does pencil him in to be like a top 24 running back every single week, but ultimately it's still not a great offense. He's still a running back that's not a great receiver. I mean, previous to this, his targets were 2, 3, 0, 2, 4, 2, 1, 2, 2. I mean, if you were looking at his receiving yards previous to this, I mean, he had like 100 receiving yards through 8 games. So, I mean, I don't know. Great week for Brian Robinson. Helps our best ball teams a lot. In reality, I don't necessarily think it changes his rest of season value too much. Now, CeeDee Lamb, I kind of want to throw in the bucket of Keenan Allen, right? How much higher can this guy really go? If you are looking at Lamb, now in the community rankings, he is wide receiver 4. He is only behind Tyreek, A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase, and he is slowly but surely creeping himself up here. He's had 3 games with more than 10 receptions, with more than 150 receiving yards. That's 3 games straight, ladies and gentlemen. This Dallas Cowboys offense has been absurd. CeeDee Lamb has been absurd. I do expect this to come back down to earth a bit, right? The Cowboys just scored 49 points against the Giants. It scored 43 against the Rams. Can we reasonably expect this through the rest of the season? Probably not, but can we expect CeeDee Lamb to go out there and have 12 targets, say 9 receptions, 100 receiving yards, and possibly a touchdown? Yeah. So I think, honestly, if you wanted to make an argument to move CeeDee Lamb up to like wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, I think he can. Really, the only guy that's going to be penciled in for sure ahead of him would be Tyreek Hill here. Now, I want to talk about this Detroit backfield, and that both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, phenomenal games. Both running backs get there if you started them. My expectation for the backfield coming into the week, and this is what we've said all season, is Gibbs is the premium receiving back with a little more juice. If you're playing in a full PPR format, given the target volume that Jahmyr Gibbs should have, I'm going to be going with Gibbs. If you're playing in a non-PPR league, given the red zone role and the touchdown upside David Montgomery should have, I'm going to go with Montgomery. However, what's very interesting to see in this week is Jahmyr Gibbs maybe taking this goal line role. Now, the first rushing touchdown Jahmyr Gibbs had, I know David Montgomery let him stay in the game, yada, yada, yada. Essentially, Gibbs had a massive play, got him down inside the 5-yard line, and he was essentially just treated with that touchdown, right? It's like, hey, you did the work, man, just stay out there, you're good to go. But beyond that, you did have another goal line rushing touchdown for Jahmyr Gibbs. So it doesn't look like David Montgomery is guaranteed to be that goal line back in Detroit every single trip to the red zone now. Now, of course, Montgomery got his fair share of work inside the 5-yard line. So David Montgomery, still a great option in his own right. But we know that Gibbs will be the receiver. Like if you look at this season, so far Jahmyr Gibbs, over the past, say 4 weeks, over the past month, he's had 25 targets. He's averaging about 6 targets per game. And now he has the possibility of goal line usage as well. So not only does it look like you want Jahmyr Gibbs in the PPR, half PPR format over David Montgomery, it looks like you can make a strong argument you want Jahmyr Gibbs in a non-PPR league as well if he's going to get this red zone usage. And right now, if you look at his community ranking on flockfantasy.com, Jahmyr Gibbs has moved up to RB6. I can't argue at all with this based off the receiving usage, based off how good this offense is, how good this offensive line is. I think that Jahmyr Gibbs has to be viewed as a mid RB1. Now, David Montgomery is sitting there at RB12 in the community rankings. I do expect him to fall behind like Breece Hall. I expect him more so to be like RB13-ish. But yeah, I think that Montgomery you can rank as a must-start guy every single week as well, just based off how good this Detroit Lions offense is. But in a full BBR format, I want to reiterate what we've said all year. Montgomery, not really going to catch the ball right. He's had 6 receptions this season. But I think that should be it for this video. I really hope that we're able to help you out in some way here. Really hope you're able to get something from this. If you did, go down there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems in this video, you can find that link in the description, find in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and that Joe Burrow special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you, and really hope we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.